Hello, everybody, and welcome to GoIndieNow's live panel discussion show. I am your host, Joe Compton, as usual, and welcome to our June panel, which is dealing with rejection.
Show. I am your host, Joe Compton,
and I just made a big.
Welcome to our June panel.
I just made a big mistake there. Oh well, it happens. All right, so. Discussion show. We are dealing with rejection and graciously rejected two of our panelists tonight. So apropos of that, it sucks, but we'll move forward. And it looks like Shane had to drop out too. He's had some internet things, but he'll be back. So now I'm down to two. Luckily for me, it's two of my all-time favorites. So, and two of the best guests that I could possibly think of having. So I'm real excited for that. So welcome, and let's go ahead and deal with rejection. And as we are currently doing so right at this moment. So let's go ahead and have you both introduce yourselves. I'll start with Amanda, and then we'll try to get back on track.
All right. I am Amanda Mabry, dark fiction and fantasy author and poetess. I am also the CEO of OWS Inc., which is a literary company built by authors for authors. And I am interested in bringing both sides of the coin for this topic, being a publisher who has to unfortunately reject manuscripts and being an author who's been rejected.
And we'll touch on that. I appreciate that you have both perspectives for sure. And we're definitely going to touch on that. And then Christina.
Hi, I am Christina Rienzi. I'm a thriller author and also president of Sisters in Crime Central New Jersey. I just had a new release come out right before I went on vacation, so I'm pretty excited about that. It's a thriller called Among Us. So, but prior to that, yeah, I've had a lot of rejection and also published with a small press as well as my own publishing company, and I've been a part of Anthology, so I've run the gamut on everything, and I'm just excited to have this conversation tonight. Thank you, guys.
Awesome. Well, it's something that we all deal with, and we deal with it in many facets. Rejection is multi-layered for an artist. It's not just being rejected for your work, but also being rejected for acceptance, being rejected for all kinds of different reasons. And I wanted to start by asking the panel here, as Shane comes back in, so we'll let Shane come in. There he is. Mr. Wilson, there you are. Oh, did he freeze again? Uh-oh. All right, we'll keep going. As I deal with... there he is. Shane, can you hear me?
Me?
Yes. Now I can.
Well, that's good.
This is going so well tonight. All right. Shane, go ahead and introduce yourself to everybody.
I'm Shane Wilson, and assuming that you can still hear me and that I'm not a garbled mess of digital gook, I am the author of magical realism and light fantasy stories like A Year Since the Rain and The Smoke in His Eyes, just released in May. Hashtag new releases. Joe, back to you.
Very nice. Very nice. And you just had an event last night, too, which you played guitar at, which is cool.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, because I'm a guitarist, and I learned to play the guitar while I was writing the book so that I didn't sound like a jackass when I wrote about a guitarist. Nice. And so now I'm doing like a music/reading sort of thing during this book tour, which is pretty cool, I think.
Yeah, that's definitely pretty cool. So starting off with the panel here, let me ask you, what is your honest opinion of rejection? How do you feel about it?
Is that for anyone in particular?
Yep. Anyone don't want to jump in?
Okay, well, I'll do it, Joe, because I've dealt with rejection since I was 12 years old. And this girl named Tiffany at my middle school, who was not interested in the stuffed frogs that I bought her for Valentine's Day. And honestly, she loved frogs, Joe, and I thought that it was going to be a pretty interesting way to get into that situation. But, you know, it didn't really work out. So I think that that is valuable because it teaches us things. It teaches us things either about our approach, or it teaches us things about our creation, you know. And I think that through that we can learn, even though I was a slow learner with Tiffany in the 8th grade. I think I figured it all out.
All right. And that is, you started, was that because of Tiffany? Was that the girl? I remember you telling me a story about how you started writing poetry because of.
Oh, yeah. No, you know, let's see. I don't think it was because of Tiffany. That seems trite. Like, she's not that important. I just thought she was cute, you know. So who knows really who was the trigger for that poetry stuff, but I'm sure she was awesome. And I'm sure it was you know when it happened, the poetry happened, because my middle school was in one of those situations where the county was split for elementary, you know, so like I went over here for a while, and then everybody else was over here for a while, and then in middle school we all came together, and so all of a sudden there are all of these strange new people, and also hormones, and so now I'm like, poetry is how my adolescence really played out. It's just as shit as any other adolescence.
How about you, Lise? What is your opinion of rejection?
I'll go, I guess. I'll jump in. So on the topic of poetry, I don't know what it means when you write poetry for other people, because I feel like I started out writing like love poems for my guy friends, girlfriends. Like, so I don't know if that's ghostwriting at an early age or what, but I definitely think that poetry, that poetry is like in all of us when we're young too, right? It's like how we get our emotions out.
I used to that.
It's a thing, right? Now people's right. Now I should have been collecting back then. I guess I wasn't a good salesperson, but I just wanted them to be happy. So I don't know. I mean, I think, you know, rejection is very personal, and, you know, depending on who you are and how you look at that rejection, depending on what it is, you know, if it's, especially in the writing world, if it's, you know, a flat out rejection for a story, or maybe a bad review, or just, again, something that, you know, is really important to you and personal to you. You know, I try to look at it as, you know, a learning experience for me, for sure. I mean, if it's constructive feedback, if there's constructive feedback in that rejection, I feel like I do take that to heart, and I you know, try to improve upon that. If it's more of an opinion and something that's kind of like a singular piece of information, I don't, you know, let that kind of get in my way. But certainly I listen to, you know, any kind of criticism or feedback I would get in that vein in the writing world. And I really do try to look at it as a way to improve and or just build my kind of thick skin so I can keep going and persevere, which I think is really important, especially in this business.
Very nice.
I think with what she just said is a really important part of it, because it is part of the process and part of the learning process and part of growing as a writer. But if we're not counseling new writers as they come in on that, I think rejection probably shuts down a lot of what could have been bright writing careers. So, Joe, you know how I feel about helping new writers into the field. So I think that rejection is something that we really need to make sure that they understand that it's not personal. It is part of growing, and not every rejection is the same, because I know I've seen some rejection letters that would seem a lot more received earlier in a career than later. And there's no way to control when you get those types of rejections.
Very true. Very true. Now, do you all remember the first time you were rejected and how you felt? Do you think that over time is how you develop a thick skin, or do you think that it's something that you can inherently have right from the get-go? Did you guys know when you were getting into your writing that, hey, you're going to be rejected, so I need to prepare myself for this? Or is it something that you guys had to develop?
I think it's going to be different for everyone, because I know for me, on a logical level, I can take a rejection and grow from it. But underneath that, it still hurts because I'm still very sensitive. I don't have thick lizard skin, so it still hurts. But I just try to focus on the logical learning part of it.
Anybody else want to talk about it?
You know, I personally, for me,
go ahead.
Oh no, go ahead.
No. You first.
I jumped in and took over. I'm sorry. You know, I feel like I expected it when I first started out, because I tend to like just have high expectations of myself, and I don't, you know, it's that like you never think you're good enough, and I'll have that forever because I'm always trying to get better. So I think I expected it, and I think I was more surprised when I like got an acceptance that like what can't be real kind of thing. But you know, it does hurt. I mean, it definitely like you sort of like have that moment where I remember specifically the first book I wrote, which took me like 7 tries to get it right, I guess. And I sent it, before I even started submitting it, I sent it to a professional editor in California that I had got a recommendation from an author of mine who's does really well. And I remember when I got the edits back, I literally I wrote her back and I'm like, okay, I'm done. And she's like, no, make the changes and send it back to me. Like, we're going to get this ready to be published. And I'm like, it took me like a month of like wanting to like just hide in a hole. And then I wanted to burn the manuscript. I remember that specifically. I was like, I'm burning it and I'm never writing again. And that was the very first major like rejection I got, where I thought, this is like, I have to rewrite this whole book, because I really kind of didn't know what I was doing when I got in, you know, when I first started. I started with I was a short story writer who tried to write a novel, and I thought I did enough work, but I didn't. So, you know, it was very hard emotionally. And then each time that I worked a little bit more on it, and it got better and better. And then finally by the last version, and when she wrote me back and said, great job, I was like, oh my God, like I did it. You know, I did, it's readable. Like that was my level of success at that point. But I felt like, I had to sort of like walk away and then come back. And yeah, definitely easier now. Now, when I send my book in and I get edits back, I'm like, bring it on. Like, I get a glass of wine. I laugh at half the stuff because it's all true. And it's like, what do you like? I think like, I look at it and go, what was I thinking? Like, why would I not have done that? But then, you know, you also revel in the good times. So it's kind of like, you know, it's building your, yes, like a thick skin is what I call it for me anyway. And just your, you know, your ability to persevere through. So.
Very nice. Shane?
I think that anyone who starts to pitch a book and doesn't expect some amount of rejection has just been living in some kind of a weird cave or something, you know? I mean, if you do any kind of research about this business, then you know that everyone that we all love to read was rejected, you know, a million times before they ever found any kind of success. And so I think that any kind of a realistic artist knows that there will be rejection. And I also think that most of us deal with some kind of what Christina was talking about, that sort of like imposter syndrome. When you actually find a little success, you're like, huh, like what, like who am I, you know, to be signing this contract? And it's this weird kind of relationship that we have with expecting rejection and wanting success, and then not knowing really how to emotionally deal with success when it actually finds us.
Awesome. That's great points, everybody. So that being said, is there some things you've learned over time to help minimize rejection? Is it a matter of, and what advice would you give to a new author who comes to you and says, I'm afraid of being rejected? How can I help myself in that area?
I think it's like Shane just said, you just have to go in knowing that it's going to happen. It's going to happen. You could write the best story ever and it's still not going to appeal to somebody. And that, I think, is what you really need to focus on. Everything doesn't appeal to everyone, and there's going to be rejections.
You know, there's so many examples of people kind of being ahead of the curve when it comes to publication, especially if you look at like mainstream publication with the big publishing houses. You look at like J.K. Rowling or any of these folks that pitch something that's kind of a unique idea, and publishers will pass on really great ideas if the market isn't showing that there's like value in that idea, you know. But at the same time, how do you know if there's value in this idea if you don't give it a shot? And that's kind of the catch-22, and that's why independent publishing is so important, because it gives us an avenue for presenting new and fresh ideas. So the mainstream isn't necessarily always receptive to those things.
Yeah, awesome. I know, Christina, you probably have something to say on this, but I just want to jump really quickly in here and say that YouTube didn't reject Bruce. Bruce is here.
I was being rejected.
Hi, Bruce. How you doing?
Okay, I don't know if my microphone is working.
Yes, we hear you. Good.
Okay, I was being rejected by my technology, so it's perfect.
Yeah, I was saying how apropos was. So why don't you introduce yourself real quick so that everybody knows who you are, and then we can move forward.
Okay, my name is Bruce Solheim, Olaf Solheim, actually. I use my middle name. I'm a history teacher and a writer and a playwright, and I'm happy to be here and hear what everybody has to say. Rejection, of course, is a big part of what we do. Just like being a door-to-door salesperson, you know, a lot of rejection.
Yeah, definitely. So the question is how as artists have you learned over time to minimize your rejection, and what's one tip you would give if a new writer approached you about being rejected that might help them minimize their opportunity?
Well, I think the more you believe in what you're doing, and the true honesty of your project or your book or your play, that carries through, and it helps you better target you know, who you want to approach, whether it's a publisher, producer, whatever. And I think you have to have that going in, and rather than a shotgun approach where you're wasting your time and wasting their time.
And I'll just add to that, that, you know, I think the most important thing for me and for the people that I interact with in the writing world is support, knowing that there are people that you can talk to, that everybody's been there, that, you know, you may know people who seemed like they were an overnight success, but it really was like a 20-year overnight success. And the comparisonitis that I believe Joanna Penn uses that all the time. It's when you're consistently comparing yourself to other authors and their success and their path, knowing that your path is your path. It's for a reason. It's for you to learn and grow, and that it's not personal. It's a business. It's a business, and it's there's of course there's the craft, and as long as you are working on your craft to do the very best you can, and your story is the very best story that you can write, and you believe in it, don't give up. Keep going with it. You know, you keep going with it. And that's the one thing I've learned. It's like, I'm not going to stop writing because one book didn't go the way I wanted it to go. And I always say, like, it's the best book I could have written at that point in my life with what I knew. And every book gets better and better. And I work on my craft with every book. I'm trying something new, and I'm working really hard to raise my level. But you just don't give up. And it's not personal. Again, it's a business. And you just have to be true to yourself and to your story.
Is there something to be said for doing your research ahead of time too, knowing where properly to place your marketplace and to who to contact?
Oh, definitely. Yeah. No, I think that's other than your writing talent and working on your writing and writing every day. I mean, knowing where to put your energy is really important. I wasted a lot of time on people and places that would have no interest in what I was doing from the get-go. No matter how good it was, it could have been the best thing ever, and they wouldn't care because they weren't interested in what I was doing.
Mm-hmm. So
there's a lot of luck involved too. I mean, you got to hit the right person at the right day. And like, for instance, I just got an email. I wrote a play 5 years ago and produced it at the college where I teach. And I got an email from a guy who saw it 5 years ago and is now in a position as artistic director and said, we want to produce this play. 5 years, that's I didn't know. I'd kind of given up on the project, and all of a sudden, boom, there it is. And now it might happen. We'll see.
That leads to a great question that one of our audience members had, and that was from FD Gross. He asked, how many times in being rejected do you, or let me get the right question here. How many times were you rejected before traveling a different path? Is there a number that you put on it yourselves, or is it a certain, do you have an idea of when?
Well, I think what Christina was saying is right. You never give up. You never totally give up. I mean, I moved on to other plays. I wrote many other plays, other books and stuff, but I mean, it's always there. It's always, just maybe on the back burner, but you just never know what's going to happen and when something is going to hit. And the more quality things you put out there, the more chance you're double, tripling, quadrupling, whatever your chances of something getting into the right hands or in front of the right person at the right time in the right place.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So first, I want to jump in here before I forget this. First, I need to talk to Bruce because I am starting to work on a play, and I need to talk to you about that. Second, I think it's important to cast a wide net, but that net, I mean, you have to use the right net, and you have to use it in the right kinds of waters, right? Because you can't just use scattershot and hit every single agent that you can find on Twitter, because that's going to be a lot of wasted time for you and for them, because they're not all looking for what you're doing. And it's really pretty easy. I mean, we live in a world where things are pretty easy, man, to like find out what these people are looking for. There's manuscript wish lists. And even like the worst case scenario, if you find a bunch of agents that are interested in the kind of thing that you're writing, the worst case scenario is that you're going to get a rejection, but you might get some really interesting and helpful feedback from those people. It's less likely that you just get a form letter if you actually do the research and you actually pitch the right way. And those are the kinds of rejections that can be really helpful, and they don't hurt. At least for me, if someone says, I read your manuscript, here's what I liked about it, here's what you should consider moving forward with other revisions, that doesn't feel like a rejection. That's like if Tiffany had said, maybe not now, but maybe a little later, work on yourself a little bit first.
Boy, that would have been some incredible foresight for her part.
Yeah, she could have really figured some things out back then, in a different situation, but
That's a great point about the constructive criticism, and if you approach it the right way, then you can get that kind of feedback. I also am curious to know if you said cast a wide net for publishers, but do you have the same approach for reviewers, or is that a different way of approaching? Because that's another form of rejection. Sometimes reviewers say they're too busy, they can't review a book, or you get a 1 star and they come back and say, hey, I can't post this review because I'm going to give you 1 star and I don't want to hurt you, but This is the way it goes. So how do you deal with that type of rejection? And is there a different approach that you use for finding that, for finding reviewers as opposed to publishers?
Boy, reviewers. I tried many different things. I had some success with my children's book that I wrote with reviewers that I knew which ones to write to, which ones to contact, because I, like you said, did the research. But I do like the idea of, you said casting a net, but casting the right kind of net. So that combination is great. That's great terminology there. Knowing who's going to be interested, and then getting as many of those folks gathered together and contact them and see who'll get caught up in your net, so to speak.
I think it also it falls under almost the customer service umbrella, because you have, like in any business, you have the corporate guidelines, and then you have customer expectation, and the customer is always right. You have to find the balance between, with a rejection from a publisher, a lot of times it could be based on technical things, but readers don't know a lot of the technical things behind the scenes. What they know is what kind of story they like, what kind of characters they like, what kind of details they're looking for. So I think it's important to know how to take what information you actually need from a reviewer and apply it to your work versus just seeing it as a rejection.
Yeah, no, I think that's true.
Very nice.
I think you also, just like when you have to understand agents, you also have to understand reviewers. Some people just don't like what you're doing, or they're just not into that stuff, If you're writing, I don't know, like some kind of a vampire fiction, and you're trying to get somebody to review it that just, maybe they're like tapped out on the number of vampires that they can care about. And so they're like, I'm over vampires now. Then you're like, you shouldn't give your book to them. Most of these people at this point have gotten, especially like the reviewers that are any kind of successful, and have large readerships and have a lot of people trying to get them to review their books. Most of them are incredibly honest in their calls for books about what they're interested in. And I mean, I'm not saying that you shouldn't, whatever, we only YOLO or whatever, you only live one time, but so like get your book out there, but at the same time, like understand that if you give it to somebody that's just not interested in what you're doing, then you're probably just you're not gonna like what they say about it.
Or maybe they are a vampire and they're offended by the book.
That could also be true. I'm working on a vampire story now, which is that's a sentence that I never thought I'd say out loud. But I'm working on a vampire story right now where it's like a vampire in like the vampire version of Alcoholics Anonymous. And like that vampire is like bitter at all of the other vampires that are portrayed in pop culture,
Yeah, I like it. I'd read that.
Oh, I will let you know, Bruce. We'll make it a play.
All right, there you go. I like your typewriter, by the way. I have the same one, an old Royal 50s.
Oh yeah,
right? I got the
solid
same
situation back there.
Yeah, I got the same one. That's a cool typewriter.
And also take notes. If you submit to reviewers and you get feedback that tells you what they enjoy and what they don't enjoy, take notes. At our right side, we keep a spreadsheet, and we've got all reviewers in a spreadsheet. We know what genres they like, what subgenres, what their favorite books were, and things like that. Because if you're like me and you're a genre whore, you're not going to stick with writing one genre. So you might have submitted to somebody that didn't like that time. But down the road, when you write, 5 different things, you know who to go back to.
Mm-hmm. So I'm curious, Amanda, from your perspective, because you are a publisher, being rejected, has that changed the way in which you approach rejecting folks, or has that helped you realize what to say, or how do you approach the rejection process itself?
As much as possible, you know how I am, Joe. I like to meet people where they are. So we rarely get a submission from an author we don't know. 9 times out of 10, it is an author we know. So I know that this author is going to need more hand-holding for this rejection. They're going to need more explanation. They're going to need more feedback. Or this one just needs a clean, no thank you. And I hope moving forward that we're able to keep it that way. I really just am a fan of meeting people where they are. And that might get harder as we get bigger, but I think that it's one of the things that makes us different.
How about for the rest of the panel, when you're reviewing something, have you taken note about how you've been reviewed? Has that shaped how you review someone?
Well, I guess with someone was, well, talking about plays, a friend of mine, an actor, actually wrote a play and was telling me the story, and the way he was telling it to me, he was trying to get some producers interested in. And the only thing the suggestion I had, I thought it was a great play, great idea, strong female lead character, which is, not, most plays are not like that. But I told him to have imagery in mind. And I told him a story of how I got the producer interested in my play about Norway, about northern Norway in World War II. I did it by making a Sami drum, the indigenous people in the north. They have these oval-shaped drums. Actually, right here. I guess you can see it, right?
Mm-hmm.
So anyway, so I made one of those, and I brought it in the meeting, and they were playing the drum while I was talking about imagery, and that's what sold them.
Nice.
The idea of imagery, they can see, they can touch it. I mean, if you can bring something like that, I mean, that just brings people right in, I think.
How about with you, Christina? You being a life coach or getting into that field, I'm sure this is a topic that comes up a lot for you.
Yes, and I do have, just from my experience in counseling and also like in corporate America with leadership and stuff, you're constantly giving feedback. It's not, they don't always want to hear what you have to say. So with writing, I understand it on a different level because, it's personal. I know what it means when you have a story you believe in and you work so hard on it and it just doesn't meet the mark. I've worked with a couple of people who, like, I've read their stories ahead of time, or like newer authors who are like, how'd you get into writing? Let me show you what I have. And I give as much of the positive feedback as I can up front, right? And then I'll get into the things I think could use improvement. And I give examples. I think examples are really helpful. Like, here's what you did. Here's what would make it stronger. And I try not to say like better or anything. I try to say like stronger writing, or more, we'll give more clarity to the reader, or I try to use language so it's not accusatory and I'm not, dragging them down, because I know it's a learning process. And I also know that, there's an evolution to it and everybody has their own way of writing. We all have our own voice. I also try to help, like I've had a few writers, I've worked with friends of mine who weren't sure what genre they were writing in, because in the beginning if you're not studying one particular genre and trying to stick to the rules per se, like a lot of things cross genre. There's a lot of stories that are multi-genre. So I would work with them a little bit on like what I felt, that was and why, just to bring clarity. And again, like the story is theirs. It's for them to do with what they want. And so for me, it's about just trying to help and improve versus, being critical and negative. I think whatever feedback I can give, I want to be helpful, but I also want to leave it up to them to make that decision. At the end of the day, it's their work. And if they want to reject everything I have to say and just go publish it, well, you know what, maybe I'm wrong. Maybe, like I don't have it right. So, I feel like any feedback you can give or criticism that you can give, I try to make it helpful for them.
Nice, very nice. And Shane, you're attempting a new artistry. You're becoming a musician to a certain extent. You're performing as a musician. So, so tell me, that's a different type of rejection. Silence is deadly to the musician.
Also, the magician.
And the magician, right?
and so, has that crept into your mind about how to deal with that type of rejection? Or are you just kind of, is it kind of just a whimsical thing that you're trying, and so that it doesn't hurt, you know, it doesn't affect you as much?
Yeah. If I could back up and talk about the reviews thing for a minute, and then talk about the music thing, if that's okay.
Yeah, please.
So what I was thinking about, what I was thinking about with the reviewing anything really is, and this has been a recent, a recent-ish revelation probably, because I was born and bred in academia, and so like because of that, I am like a snarky asshole about a lot of things, but what I've learned.
No way.
No, not me. But what I've learned in the last, I don't know, a little bit is that, and it's something that is inherent. Like I knew it always, but it's something that I've really come to terms with over the last little bit, and that is that all art is subjective, and it's a personal experience. It's art is like religion in that way. We all experience it in different ways, and all of it is for somebody. And all of it may not be for me, but all of it is for somebody. And when I look at something and I review it, I have to keep that in mind, you know, that this was created, and even though I'm not in the audience, someone out there will find value in it, even if the only person that finds any value is the person that wrote it. But that's still important, you know. Because that's cathartic or whatever. And so I think that when you review something that isn't necessarily for you, it's difficult, but you have to, I think you have to explore a little bit of empathy and just put yourself in the shoes of someone who would enjoy that piece of art. And that's a difficult process maybe, but I think that it's valuable. Now, in terms of this music thing, man, like it is absolutely new, you know, because I said I started playing the guitar 3 years ago when I started writing this book, which is called The Smoke in His Eyes. It is available now in all major retailers and etc. And I'll talk to you about it if you are interested. But regardless, I started because I was writing about a guitarist. I wanted to learn how to play, even if it was just a little bit. And as most musicians will tell you, the first time I strung 4 chords together and played a song, I was like, oh yeah, this is it, you know. And I've learned, there's a passage in the book that talks about how people who don't know anything about music are super easy to impress. You know, if you can string 3 or 4 chords together and you can get in front of an audience of people that don't know what that means, then you can knock them off, you can knock their socks off, you know. And so my shitty music is the new shitty poetry in a lot of ways. But I've only recently started playing this music live in front of people. And I mean, you start playing where you start playing, and you play in bars and whatever. And, you know, people listen to you or they don't. And the music that you want them to hear, the music that you want them to experience is never the music that they will, you know. They are waiting for Michael Jackson covers and Journey and whatever. And I'm like, but listen to my heart-wrenching originals. But they're just like, play Beat It Again. Right, yeah. And you know what? Every time somebody plays Freebird, I just punch them in the face. No, I'm just kidding. I've never punched them. I have not punched anyone in the face, not even once. So, but yeah, you know, like when people are just like hunched over their drink and not listening to you like that, there's something to that. But at the same time, I think that this is the way that music and writing are similar. The people who aren't listening aren't the people that you're trying to reach, you know? And I think that if you are genuine and if you create and you make art that that is real and that means something to you, and you stick with that and you don't try to sell out or whatever, then you'll find that audience. You just have to be consistent, and you have to persevere, you know?
Very awesome. Very true. So anybody willing to share a rejection experience? Shane shared one earlier, but in which you didn't handle it the way that you think you would handle it now? Is there one that you particularly, that might have shaped how I handle rejection now?
Oh, well, in terms of this children's book that I wrote called Allie's Bees, it's actually for middle grade and above, but trying to get it into bookstores. I know this is indie now, right? So, and there's so many bookstores here in LA that just will not even consider an independently published book. I mean, just outright, they don't even want to hear about it. There was a perfectly, my story is centered in East LA. So I found this independent bookstore in East LA, and they cater to children and everything. It's just a perfect target. And I guess this is where perfect targeting doesn't always work. But, and I approached them and they said, there's no way we'll even consider an independently published book. And I said, well, you have not read this one. And, they didn't care. So I didn't make a personal visit, but it was the first hard rejection of trying to get the book out there and do the readings and stuff. I did eventually find an independent bookstore in Pasadena, and that worked out really well. But yeah, that was pretty hard. I didn't understand it at all. Why it could be so doctrinaire, not even give you a shot.
Were they just afraid that they couldn't sell it? Do you know?
I suppose so, but it's the way it was described. It was almost doctrine for them. We don't consider anything that is not from a major publisher or from a not independently published. So it was just an outright rejection. And one thing they did say is that they find that independently published books are of very poor quality and poor editing and all this other stuff. And here I'd spent a lot of money on editing because I don't trust myself, to do it myself. But yeah, so that was a hard rejection. But I kept going. So
yeah, and then you got that Pasadena gig, and I'm sure
and
there
then other ones, and then
all of that. Yeah.
So
was it just a matter of perseverance for you, or did you hone your targeting message a little bit stronger after that experience?
I kind of was able to figure out, that there are going to be some bookstores like that just aren't going to want me to do a reading there, and others will be more open to it. So I just have to keep going and find out. And they don't necessarily tell you. Sometimes on the website they'll tell you we don't consider independently published books, but a lot of times they don't. You don't find out until it's like a salesperson knocking on the door. You don't know until you get the door slammed in your face. But eventually, yeah, it creeps in, and then this was a weird book in that it started off as a play and then became a book. Usually it goes the other way around. So that was rather interesting. So what I work them in tandem. So I go to schools and we perform the play and sell the book, and the word is spreading. So it's just a lot of, hitting the bricks, it's a lot of work. And then I have actor friends who help me. So, thank goodness for that. So it takes a village.
which is not in shortage in LA.
No, we got a lot of actors, so that's good.
How about anybody else?
I'm sorry. I was going to say, in the vein of rejection molding you going forward, it wasn't a story rejection so much as I started off in this writing group, which I will not name, and it was really awful. It was soul crushing. Like, it was a critique and writing advice group, and they were very harsh. They really drilled home that whole, you have to have lizard skin, don't be a crybaby, shut up and take this critique. It was a very harsh and very popular group. And being in that group, I just constantly would think, if this is a new writer coming in and this is the environment they come into, it is going to crush any desire they have to be a writer. And it was that which inspired me to want to start something like Our Right Side. And it was kind of a start and stop before we got it right, but that's what it was. I wanted any writer, but especially new writers, to have a safe place to grow and learn without having saged and jaded writers, you know, breathing down their throat and just hounding them on everything they're doing wrong. Because it was hard. Like, I almost wanted to quit writing from being in that group. So, my rejection story.
It sounds like boot camp.
It really was.
That's not an indoctrination that you really want when you're just starting out either.
Right.
I guess in theater, now I forgot the name of the technique, but there's some technique for critiquing plays, and now I can't remember what it's called. But anyway, there's a very specific way of doing it, and it's very constructive, but it's very gentle. You know, you ask for permission. I'd like to talk about this element of the story. Can I talk about that? And then, you know, I like it. I just can't remember what it's called now. There's a certain technique. It actually started with dance.
Are you talking about the sandwich method, where you start with positive and then you do negative and then you end with positive?
I don't. No, it's not. Well, it may be. It's kind of like that, but there's a specific name for it, and it actually started with dance, and then it moved into theater. They use this technique for evaluating plays, and I just really like it. But I like the idea of you know, not just doing this harsh criticism that doesn't. I mean, yeah, a lot of people just won't recover from that, or they'll lose their so much confidence that they'll have to, you know, restart from the beginning, and it's hard enough as it is.
The Lerman method.
What's that?
Is it the Lerman method?
Yes, Liz Lerman. Yes, that's it. Thank you. Yeah, it's excellent. I think it adapts to other, you know, things as well. Started with dance and then went to theater.
Okay, goes to Google. I looked it up.
Oh, awesome. Another Google genius.
Those are definitely the techniques from counseling and coaching too. So it's so helpful, like, to incorporate those.
How about you, Christina? You willing to share a story for us?
Yeah, I think, you know, earlier when I was talking about that first kind of pass at my manuscript, when it was like it had to be rewritten 7 times until I got it right. The only thing I would say about, you know, I didn't react to it the way I would have liked. I sort of was like, I'm giving up. I'm never writing again. I'm setting it on fire. I'm done. But, you know, and of course I had to go through that, you know, and I think even to this day, when I get back, I mean, it really is just about the edits. When I get back my first edit round, I usually take a break. I walk away from it for a couple weeks and then I get to it, because I don't want to get too heavy into it. But I will say that the way that I go about it now is really different. I try to look at it. Well, first I try to use humor. You know, I try to like laugh about it to a certain extent and just kind of go like, yeah, you know, like I could have got that. I could have did better there. I could have did that. And I try to make light of it, because we can get so serious, and so it can really like burn us, and it can slow you down, if not stop you. So I try to be more lighthearted, and I definitely look at it now a little bit more as just a way for me to move forward. Like, you know, whatever the rejection may be, I don't get so upset as I used to. I kind of go, okay, you know, well, you know, either this person didn't like the book if it's a review, and, you know, it wasn't for them. And yeah, of course we could always do better, right? We can always be better, and I'll be better tomorrow, because I'm always better a day later than I am today, right? Every day we grow. So it's like, okay, you know, that's fine, move on. And if it's a bigger rejection, I kind of try to look at it and just say, like, that wasn't the publisher for me. That wasn't the agent for me. It wasn't for this story. It just wasn't. And I let it move on to the next, because I truly believe that if it's for me and for my story, it will happen. I've had many things fall on my lap out of the sky, like out of the sky when I wasn't looking. And I know we've all had those experiences. I didn't even ask, and it came to me, not just in the writing world, but in life. And I feel like if it's meant for me, it will come to me, and I can't beat myself up about it. Where in the beginning, I thought it made me a bad writer, and it wasn't. You know, I wasn't meant to be a writer, and that just isn't it. And I think that, you know, what we were talking about earlier, like, it's so important to encourage new writers and say, like, hey, you're new, keep working at your craft, keep writing, do what you have to do to get your story out there, to share it with people, because that's the point, right? At least, you know, I mean, there's lots of reasons to write, but, you know, I think a lot of us want people to read our work. We really do. And we want them to get some pleasure out of that. And so you just get it out there, get it in the hands of people, keep working at it, keep writing. And just, you have to go through the hard stuff to come out the other side. You have to.
Yeah.
So how important is it to you now, being that you're seasoned and you've felt rejection? How much do you feel like constructive criticism matters? Is that something that you don't even look at as rejection now because you have felt the sting before, and so now you kind of embrace it? Is it important how important is it to get constructive criticism?
Yeah. I'm just gonna, I mean, I'll go in and I'll stop because I want everyone else to talk, and I'm like, I keep talking, but I feel like it's really important for me. Like when I have a call with I have a writing coach. I also have an editor. Like I have multiple people to help me with, I always want to do better with craft. So I'm always working at that. And I'll say like, okay, they'll tell me what's great about what they liked about it. I'm like, that's great. That's great. Move on. What do I need to fix? How can I be better? What's weak? What can I grow? Like, I want to know. I want to know all of it, and I want to know how, if it's terrible, if it's like good, like where am I on the spectrum? Because all I want to do at this point in my career is get better, and whatever that takes. And if it rips my heart out, and if it, like, even if it hurts, like I'm ready. I'm ready for it. But it took, I mean, this is like 8 years, you know, of this. That, you know, this wasn't overnight. But I am at that point where I feel like I want it. I want it from the people, to me, you know, who know me, who know my writing, who I respect in the community, who I feel like I can learn from. Certainly, I want feedback from readers always, and I absolutely take that into account as well, because I want to give readers what they want. It's not all about me; it's about my readers. But yeah, I'm very open to it, and I just want to learn and grow from it. Like, that's my ultimate goal, and whatever it takes to get there. And if I have to go through, you know, a lot to do that, I will. That's, you know, my mindset.
I had something I wanted to say. I was waiting for other people to jump in, but I'll say something. I was just watching a video of Jerry Seinfeld being interviewed. And they were talking. The interviewer was asking him, "Do you know, when you're doing comedy or when you're doing your writing, do you care what people want?" And this kind of goes maybe kind of it seems like it's going to be against what Christina said, but not really. And he said, "I don't really care what they want. I'm the one that's in show business, you know." And I thought that's kind of interesting. I mean, it seems really harsh in a way. It's like, what, you don't care what people, I think you do care, but I think it maybe has more to do with the creative process. You know, of course, people want quality stories and well-edited stories, and, you know, not like first drafts and stuff like that, obviously. But I think the essence of the message that we have is what convinces people that's what they want. And if you're really lucky, you'll write something that means a lot to you and that is well done, and then it hits in the right genre at the right time, and then people realize they can't live without it, that they need it. And I think that those perfect, you know, like the perfect storm, all those elements coming together, doesn't happen very often, but it does every once in a while, and even moderately so is good, you know. Even if you have moderate success with that. But I think the idea that it has to start with something you believe in, and you know what you want, and then they'll figure out that's what they want too. If you're enthusiastic enough about it, and it comes through, the energy comes through in your writing.
Shane, Amanda, you guys want to jump in here?
So, all right. So the original question was, do we still consider rejection, or do we still consider criticism rejection, right? Because
Sort of.
I also,
how much do you look forward to it now, though? Is what
How much do I look forward to criticism? I mean, I love it. Please let me get as much as possible. Please, sir, may I have another? No. Honestly, it's valuable and it sucks sometimes. But I think that whenever you write any new manuscript, the advice is always to put it away for a while, do it later with fresh eyes, and then you can look at it and you can see it for what it is. I think that the same, and when I receive any kind of criticism like that, especially in terms of here's what you can do better, all that, it does sting a little bit because it means that I was doing something not as good as it could have been done. And I read it, but a real emotional reaction to it. I put it away, and I come back to it later after my brain has sort of had a moment to deal with it, and then later I can see it for what it is, and that is that this person is trying to help me. If it's real criticism, then they're trying to help me. If it's mean-spirited, then that person can piss off. But that's I was gonna say I was gonna tell this story earlier, and I think that we probably all have one of these stories. So the very first negative review that I got on Goodreads, it wasn't awful, but it was unsettling. And so I looked at, and the great thing about Goodreads, and also the awful thing about Goodreads, is that you can look at this person's account and see what else that they've looked at and see what else they've reviewed, And so I write magical realism, and I saw that this person also gave a Gabriel Garcia Marquez novel a bad review, and I was like, oh, never mind. And they just don't get what I'm doing, Like, if you are going to grade Marquez down, then you just don't get it. Like, he's the master, So you also have to. I mean, look, you can drive yourself crazy trying to justify that stuff too, and like that way lies only madness. And I've grown out of that since then. But I think we all have one of those moments where we read something that someone's written about us, and we're like, wait, I don't know about this person. Let's check this out a little bit more. So I don't know. I was going to say something about what Bruce was talking about too, but that was like an hour ago, so I don't know anymore. I feel like I've been talking for 3 years.
All right, let me just clear this up right now. None of you are talking too much. You are here to talk, so please talk. I don't have a problem with anybody talking, so please talk.
Oh, you know what I wanted to say?
It's my turn.
No, Amanda. Okay, I'll make a note, and then I'll come back to what Bruce was talking about even later.
All right.
Make sure it's a really good note, because the last one of these that we did, Joe talked and I talked, and then the person had a note and they couldn't remember what their note meant.
This doesn't even have any ink in it.
Critique. I actually sent something out recently for edits, and it came back with a lot of, oh, this is great. I love this scene. This is perfect. And it was so disappointing and so disheartening. Like, I know it's not that great. I know that when I put something out, it needs work. So all that time I spent waiting for it was wasted time because I didn't get any feedback that I could work with. And then I sent it to another editor who I won't name, Rebekah Jonesy, and it came back covered in red ink. And it was like the happiest day ever, because now I have this whole laundry list of things to work on, because I knew there were issues, but we can't see them when we are looking at the same story over and over and over again. So I love critique. I welcome it, but I don't take it well when it's like, you really suck and you should probably rethink all of this. Like, I need it with a spoon of sugar because I don't have thick skin.
Okay, Shane.
Okay, so
go ahead.
So 2 things. My first thing is going to be unrelated to what Bruce was talking about, but it's going to be related to what Amanda was just talking about and what we've all talked about at some point. And then my second thing is going to be about what Bruce was talking about, maybe. So first, I'm working on my second master's right now in creative writing. And a long time ago, I was dating this girl, and she said, you should never get an MFA in creative writing because it will break you, right? And what she was talking about is the workshop element of the MFA and the critique part of it, right? And honestly, man, like, it's just not like that. You know, people are generally looking for the redeeming qualities of your work. And, you know, every grad school has some jackass in it that's trying to make sure that everybody knows that he's smarter than everybody else. But for the most part, people are pretty encouraged. That's what I think. Okay, so now, Bruce, you might have to help me a little bit to remind, because I wrote down a bunch of random words that I was thinking of whenever you were talking. I think you were talking about something about stories that, like, the right place and the right time. Does that seem familiar?
Yeah, yeah.
So our culture, call it capitalism, loves to, oh, now we're going to get a little dicey, right? But it loves to, like, find something that works, and then it just likes to run that bitch into the ground, you know? And so we start to see things like, I don't know, 1 million superheroes in one movie, and it makes so much money, you know? But I think that what we've seen, especially in the last little bit, is that there's still a really strong desire culturally for unique stories that are well done. And I cite A Silent Place as an example of that. A movie that really, like, on paper shouldn't make as much money as it did, shouldn't be as successful as it was, but yet it found its audience, and it kind of blew up, especially for that kind of film. So I'd like to see studios, and I'd like to see publishers take more risks, because they have the machinery in place to make money. They're not going to go broke if they take a couple more risks. But they're just so ingrained in this kind of thing where, you know, this is working. So, so vampires are hot this year. I'm on vampires again. Sorry. Vampires are hot this year. We're going to put out every vampire book we can get our hands on. And we're going to overlook all of these other things that might also be good, that other people might also enjoy. Just because that's kind of the hot commodity right now. And zombies was the thing for a while, and superheroes will be the thing forever. Joe, I saw a really interesting thing today. This is a tangent. I saw a banner today at Best Buy that said, it said Black Panther available on Blu-ray, and it had a quote, and it said, one of the best superhero movies of the century. And I was like, how long have we been making superhero movies? That, like, I mean, like, but like multiple centuries?
Yeah, no, probably not, but pretty close.
And did they mean like did they mean of the last 18 years, or did they mean of like the last 100 years, you know?
Sounds better if it's century as opposed to decade, or, you know, it's just one of those words that has a vibrant, you know, it's using an action word that
I
will
like
sell
the
it.
movie, but
what you were saying, Jane, is very much
sorry.
No, I mean, what you were saying, though, is very much how the film market works. If you go to the American film market, or if you go and do pitches for films, you'll find that they're all looking for one thing. Like, the marketplace is looking for one thing. And if you don't have that one thing, then they won't pay attention to you. I wonder, bringing it full circle to rejection, if when we are starting to reject the idea of we need a traditional publisher to publish our work, are the traditional publishers then going to adjust? Because all they're going to end up doing is reprinting the same John Grisham novel over and over again. Or as long as it makes hand over fist, is that ever going to change? Is that the driving force? Is it the moneymaker? Or do you think that eventually they'll have to change because there's just more and more of us growing every day?
So I think it was last year I went to Random House because it's pretty, I mean, New York's really close to me. So I go into the city a lot, and they have open houses where you can go in and you can speak to, like, you know, best-selling authors, the editors, agents, some agents are there as well, also the publisher. Anyway, they do a presentation and they talk about the writing industry and all these things. And it was interesting, 2 things I learned last year. One was disheartening and one was like, it gave me hope for all of us. So the one piece that they talked a lot about was their sort of list of what they need, right? So they'll have like, you know, their meeting in the beginning of the year for all of their editors, and they sit down at the table and they go around the table and they talk about like what they need to publish in like 2 years, because I guess they're working behind, right? And everybody will have their sort of lineup of what they're looking for. You need this many of this genre, this many of this with this kind of, you know, setting, this much of this. And, you know, everybody has their assignments. They're like objectives. Think of like a corporate objective, right? This is the way I looked at it. And they are off and running, and that's what they have to get. Of course, if there's something outside of that, you know, they bring it to the table and they can always find a place for it. So there is that where they go in, they have their assignment, they're done. So you're submitting thinking like, my story's so amazing and somebody's going to take it. And it's like, not on our agenda. Not, you know, we're not looking for anything like that for like 2 years. Like it's not, and by the time you write what they're looking for, you're behind the curve. So they always say like, don't write to market, write for you, because you just never know. And that is true. The other piece, which I really liked, was that a lot of the editors, and this is specific to Random House, I don't know about the other big publishers, but they're doing spin-off imprints of very, you know, with very different lines than the main line is doing. So you'll have a lot of opportunity for diversity, a lot of opportunity for unique stories, opportunities for short stories, for poetry, for all these things. And it's a matter of the imprints. Now they're taking less titles, but they're looking, and they're not just accepting submissions. These guys are out on the internet. They're on Facebook. They're on Twitter. They're on Instagram. They're looking at blogs. They're looking for writers. These editors are actually seeking writers out and saying, hey, I like your voice. I like what you write. Do you have anything? It's pretty amazing. So I love that piece of it, because I do think, Joe, like that is probably something that was birthed from this whole indie world where they, you know, it's hard to compete with us. I mean, we have a lot and we can do whatever we want. So, you know, of course, the exposure, I think, in a lot of ways with the traditional publishers, if you're lucky to get up, you know, higher up on the ranks, your exposure is unbelievable. And we have a hard time competing with that. But I do think that we can do whatever we want. We have so much control. We have so much, we can write whatever we want and publish it when we want. So I liked that. I wasn't in love with the whole corporate objective type thing, but I got it. It's a business and they have to sustain the business. But I loved on the flip side of that, that their new imprints are coming out all the time. And they're under the umbrella of Random House, but they're run by a particular editor who has a passion for something. You know, they have a passion for diverse, you know, multicultural stories or poetry. Like Lena Dunham has an imprint with Random House, and she loves just more of like an eclectic poetry. And she found somebody on Twitter and signed them. It's just amazing things are happening. So I think, yeah, they're trying to compete for sure.
Yeah, I've been following a story on This Week in Indies. I don't know how many people are watching my show, but I've been following a story, and I've done a couple follow-ups on it about how the ebook sales have decreased for the big 5 publishing and the bigger publishing houses, because a lot of the experts who are watching these numbers are saying they priced themselves out of the market. So us as indies have dictated that change, and they're subtly making the change, but for a lot of things, a lot of their titles now, they are starting to mark them down, and I'm noticing that, having gone shopping for a particular book that was a big 5 book, it actually was marked down from the last time I looked at it, and so I am noticing that they are paying attention to what the indies are doing, and a lot of us, if we're doing enough, we can make a change. And I think that's the encouraging part about it. Mm-hmm. Sorry, whoever I interrupted, I apologize.
I like the story of you guys are probably familiar with Harvey Pekar and American Splendor, a movie that came out, and before that it was in 1976 he started his independently, actually self-published comic book, and he was lucky enough to get underground artist Robert Crumb to do art for him. And anyway, I've been working with a artist that worked with him, his primary artist, who's not as well known as Robert Crumb, but I got him to do some art for my latest book. And it happens to be a paranormal book. And this is also a story of rejection, because I approached several publishers, some smaller publishers and unique publishers that do only paranormal stuff. And I said, well, it's paranormal memoir. And they said, well, that doesn't sell very well. I said, well, it's illustrated in a horror style by a very well-known 60s comic book artist. He's been doing, drawing comic books and for a long time. They weren't interested at all. So I found a very small publisher, and we're publishing it. It's coming out now in June. Mm-hmm. And what I was surprised by is I started marketing myself and, on these LA talk radio shows and stuff, of the fascination that people have with paranormal. But I didn't do it for that reason. I wrote the stories because I wanted to tell my stories that I have been actually afraid to tell. And this is a good point, I think, for a lot of independent authors, is that, working on your own is, you have to get over the fear. And part of the reason I was afraid to tell these paranormal stories that relate to my experiences, and I've had like probably 70 experiences and continue to have them, was that I thought in my academic life that I would be rejected by my peers and, maybe driven out of the college or whatever as some kind of lunatic. And now I'm finding that because I took the chance with not being afraid of doing that, all of a sudden it's hitting on these other, all the cylinders are starting to fire. And is because I took a big chance. And I've already written the sequel to the book. And it just keeps coming, and it just keeps coming out. And then, but I mixed it with all the things that I'm interested in, like comic book art and memoir, being a historian, and the paranormal. And I even so I talked about on 2 different LA talk radio shows, and I got the interest of Coast to Coast AM, the George Norrie's show that comes on at midnight or whatever. It's
to be Art Bell's.
What's that?
Used to be Art Bell's.
Used to be Art Bell, yeah, and Art Bell just died a few weeks ago, yeah, very sadly. But anyway, so they're interested in the book, and it's not that I was just kind of surprised that all of a sudden, from this rejection, now all of a sudden this interest, and I think it's a little bit of luck. I think it's also this, kind of this backstory that I'm a professor who was afraid to tell these stories until, I'm going to retire soon, so I don't really care what they think, what anybody thinks. And I think maybe that's what it is. You just don't care what they think, and you're just, saying what's honestly what you want to say, and all of a sudden, this interest comes, and of course it's an international phenomenon. I mean, all cultures are interested in ghosts, so every single culture. And but anyway, so that's kind of an interesting story that started with rejection, and I think we'll end up okay.
I actually went to one of the Austin film festivals I've been to. I've been to the Austin Film Festival 3 or 4 times, and American Splendor was actually one of the films that debuted there. Yeah, and I actually got to sit down and talk to Harvey Picar for 10 minutes. It was pretty awesome.
Oh man, I'm very jealous. I wish I would have. But the next best thing, Gary Dumm is the artist that I've been working with, and he lives in Cleveland and was friends with Harvey since 1976, and had a lot of Harvey stories that he shared with me. And so it's very much inspired by him. In fact, I write a story. I have a paranormal story about Harvey too, in my book. So.
Very cool. That's awesome. Great. Anybody else want to add before I ask the next question, or are we?
I mean, I have an opinion. If you're interested in hearing it, Joe.
Of course.
So here's are we still talking about whether or not indie publishing is going to put any kind of pressure on the big guys?
Sure.
Is that what we're doing?
Yes, into some respect.
So right, okay. So all right. Everybody calm down. So, maybe, I think, but so here's what I think. So the market is going to always be what it is, and eventually they're going to take a chance on somebody and some story, right? And then that's going to dictate the market for the next little bit. Yeah. So then a whole slew of people are going to get famous because they decided to write these cookie cutter formulaic books that sort of fit with the market. And until artists decide to be genuine across the board, universally genuine, and write what they actually want to write, then no, I don't think that traditional publishers are going to ever really fold to indie publishing, because there will always be a product, because people are always going to be starved enough for fame, and they'll write what they have to write in order to get there. That doesn't mean that those people aren't artists, or that those people are lesser or whatever. They're just doing what they have to do, and they're doing that along the lines of their own moral code, even if I disagree with it. So on the other side of that, I think what's really great about the indie movement is that, and the internet in general, is that it has democratized art across the board, because it has created an avenue by which we can create and distribute anything that we want to, for better or worse, right? And the good stuff finds a way of reaching the top, and the bad stuff often finds a way of reaching the top as well. But that is what it is, you know. That's democracy. Clearly, we've seen that. So I think that it's important because the gatekeepers are less important, because now anyone with an internet connection can publish and put their stuff out there, and we can, if you can find your audience, then you can let the audience decide for themselves whether or not it's quality. And as we were saying earlier, or as I was saying earlier, because I'm the only one that matters, I'm just kidding. If art is a personal experience, then if you can find the people who are moved by the things that you create, then that's really all that matters. And it would be great if we could all retire from our day jobs and just write or paint or make music all the time. But history is full of people who couldn't do that, and still wrote genuine and created genuine, heartfelt art.
Awesome. That's beautiful. Absolutely beautiful.
Yeah, you're welcome, Joe. I've been working on it for a little while.
I saw you writing on your pad.
Yeah, I took so many notes.
That was one of his first poems. You just didn't know it.
I just did like a little spoken word. We just did a little deaf poetry right there.
So Rebekah Jonesy had an interesting question, and I think she's looking at it from the eye of, she's a publisher, she's part of a publishing network, part of your network, Amanda. She asked, how can we make rejection letters less painful? So looking at it from the eye of the artist getting rejection letter, how would you like it to be less painful?
So, okay, so the really easy answer is that they're all personal, and that's not practical because it's time consuming. It's easier to swallow rejection if there's something specific in that rejection about what you created. And, you know, if they're like, you know, like we liked this about it, but we didn't like this about it, it's not for us, and here are the reasons why, that makes it easier to swallow, other than just like, dear sir or madam, your art is garbage, and we're not going to publish it because we don't publish garbage.
I'd like to say that it reminds me of when I was applying for graduate school, and I know I shot too high in applying to some places, but it was some Ivy League school, and I remember I got a rejection back. That it was a form letter, and it was a very like a skew on the page and everything, like they just like thrown it through a copier and didn't even care it went in sideways. And it said, we'd like to thank you for adding to our applicant pool. And that was it.
Wow.
Man, that's some condescending shit right there.
Yeah, I thought, man, that is really. Thank you for adding to our applicant pool.
Yeah, essentially, you just made their acceptance rate percentage look better, right?
I must, yeah. And I like the way that the letter was askew too. I wasn't even printed properly. Yeah, that was really something. But yeah, I think a personal touch is best. If if somebody can reach out, everybody likes that.
Yeah, just tell me why. That's all I want to know.
Yeah.
We also, is there something to be said that we also don't want a novel back to us? That hey, look, say what you guys say concisely in less than a couple paragraphs.
Yeah, I would think so, because I mean it's going to be harsh to take the rejection, and the longer you have to sit there and read it, knowing that it's a rejection, like wallow in it. Yeah, make it short and sweet. And
yeah, I've received Dear John letters that were 5 or 6 pages long, and I go, you couldn't tell me this in person in one sentence? Really, seriously?
Yeah, I don't know. I think it all depends on what those paragraphs say, honestly. I mean, I'm the kind of guy that kind of mines that information for every little nugget, But if you're just going to beat me up for 2 pages, then no. But if you're going to give me something that I can actually work with, then yeah, like if you're going to give me and this is probably, I don't know if you've done a panel on this yet or not, Joe, but you might write this down. You can have it for free. Something about the difference in legitimate and helpful criticism versus just beating somebody up. Like I feel like that's probably worth talking about, because as artists, I think that we have to learn the difference, and we have to learn how to deal with the harsher stuff that's not helpful, and internalize and actually do something positive with the stuff that is helpful, even though it might sting.
Wrote it down.
You're welcome.
It's in the way it's delivered is important. I think it's what you're saying, yes, but the way it's delivered. And so I've had experiences in person with people where, you pitch to people in person, or you go to writers' conferences and you talk to different people, and just even the way people speak to you or look at you or react can make all the difference in the world. And they can tell you something that is the same sentence, and it's, this goes back to just typical interpersonal relationships, but I feel like there's not enough of that, and really taking the care of another human being in the way that you communicate with them makes all the difference in the world. You could be telling them that their story is not for you and they need to work on their craft and or whatever, but the way that you say it to them can, either break their heart or can lift them up. And I think it's important for us to remember that as, fellow writers to the new writers, and also as people in the industry, that the way we speak to people is important.
Very good. Very good. Well, anybody else have anything to add they want to add there? All right. Well, I think we've dealt with rejection pretty well tonight. I really appreciate everybody coming here, and thank you, Bruce, for making the effort to keep on keeping on, and I appreciate you coming in. You were great, and I want to let everybody have an opportunity to tell everybody where they can find you, even though I have all your links. For once in my life, I was ahead of the game. I put all your links in our chat, in our description box, in the YouTube video. So anybody who doesn't get the information, right, go there and click on them, and please follow these authors and these beautiful artists and everything they're doing, because they're awesome. I'm so grateful for all of them for coming here and being a part of this. And for that, I will turn it over. I will start. I always go from my right to my left when I'm finishing. So go ahead, Shane. You are first.
Well, Joe, I'll just start by saying that I'm a little disappointed that we didn't do any role-playing of rejection. I was under the impression that maybe we would do some practice here, but fine.
Well, if you hadn't pontificated for as long as you did, we would have.
There it is. There it is. There it is. No. Also, I was wondering when we're going to have another one of our like movie ramble sessions, but we can talk about that another time. All of the information that anybody needs to know about me can be found at ShaneWilsonAuthor.com. That's all I'll say. Awesome. Now, since I've pontificated so much.
I love you, brother.
The feeling is mutual, mostly.
Except for right now. All right, Christine.
We're good.
I am the second pontificator because I've spoken a lot this evening. So yes, I am ChristinaRienzi.com. That's where you can find me. I'm all over Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, YouTube. But yeah, ChristinaRienzi.com. And love to hear from you guys. So, thank you.
Thank you for being here, Christina. Fresh off vacation, she came and did our show. I really appreciate that.
Thank you.
It's awesome to have you here, as always. All right, Bruce.
BruceOlavSolheim.com. Olav is spelled OLAV, SOLHEIM. Bruce, my first name, altogether.com. Can I show the cover of my book? Because I just want to show off the artwork because it's so awesome.
Oh, please.
Isn't that a cool cover? That's Gary Dumm's artwork.
Very Hitchcocky.
Yeah, he that's Gary Dumm's artwork. He's great. Well, yeah, thank you for inviting me.
Thank you for being here, sir. I really appreciate it. All right, Amanda.
I'm Amanda Mabry, author and CEO of Outside. You can find all my social media links. You can find my newest book, and you can find all the links to Our Right Side on my website, which is authoralmabry.com.
And I am Joe Compton. I run here GoIndieNow, and I have a book out, crime thriller Amongst the Killing, and I'm about to release my second book, We the Moral Majority. That'll be pre-sale here pretty quickly. And thank you so much all for joining us. We'll be back in July with another great panel. End of June, we have our flagship show, This Week in Indies, every week on our Facebook page, facebook.com, as many weeks as I could possibly do. We have a show this Sunday, and I'll be live again Sunday night, as I am on my personal page every Sunday night at 10 p.m. Eastern. And we have all of our shows up on our YouTube channel. So if you've liked what you've enjoyed here, you can go check out all the panels from previous months, and every panel that we do from here on out, and all the ones in the past have been time-stamped so you can go to a direct question and to take a look at the answer if you want to hear just certain parts of a certain panel. And they're all with those timestamps now, so go check that out. And if you are new to our channel and this is the first time you're viewing our video, please subscribe, like, comment. We really appreciate everything and everybody who does just that. And with that, it's always time to go indie now, and we'll see you again next time. Bye, everybody.